The tomb of the unknown soldier stood silent, guarded with absolute precision as it had been for decades. The white-gloved sentinel moved with a discipline that had been drilled into his very soul, his face set in stone, his stride measured by an unbreakable rhythm that honored those who could no longer march for themselves. Tourists stood behind the rope line, hushed by the solemnity of the scene, aware that this was no ordinary monument. Among them, a fragile figure in a wheelchair drew quiet attention, a little girl, her head bare from chemotherapy, a blanket over her small frame despite the summer warmth. Her mother leaned down and whispered something in her ear, and the girl's tired but determined eyes fixed on the guard. Normally, nothing, not the weather, not distractions, not even the sound of the world around, could shake a tomb guard from his duty. The rules were iron, unyielding, and above all, sacred. Yet as the child raised her trembling hand in salute, something stirred within the soldier's chest, a battle of duty and humanity colliding in a moment that seemed both fleeting and eternal. The crowd, though respectful, began to murmur softly when they saw the little girl's gesture. Her voice, faint but audible, whispered, "Daddy was a soldier too." Her words pierced through the stillness like a bell, and the guard's eyes, though trained to look forward, unseeing, felt the weight of her sorrow and courage pressing against his heart. Every tomb guard knew the code. Never break discipline, never speak, never acknowledge distractions, because their purpose was larger than themselves. But this wasn't just a distraction. This was a living story of sacrifice, a child carrying the burden of both illness and loss. The air itself seemed heavier, and the silence of the tomb now carried her small, fragile plea. The guard's hands clenched tighter around his rifle, every muscle screaming at him to hold the line, yet another voice whispered within, one that reminded him that the men and women they honored had fought for lives like hers. And in that instant, he realized that perhaps true honor wasn't only in obeying rules, but in remembering the humanity those rules were built to protect. Slowly, in a movement that broke every regulation written into his training, the guard shifted. Gasps rippled through the crowd as he turned his eyes, not forward, but toward her. It was the faintest acknowledgement, a crack in the marble wall of discipline, but it spoke louder than any command. The little girl's face lit up with a fragile smile, her eyes glimmering with tears that seemed too heavy for someone so small. The mother covered her mouth, overcome with emotion, knowing she was witnessing something extraordinary. The guard's boots clicked softly as he adjusted his stance, not in the perfect pattern of his march, but angled just enough so that she knew his salute would be for her. His pristine glove rose slowly, deliberately, and the white hand went to the brim of his hat. The salute was not just for a fallen soldier, it was for her father, for her courage, and for the silent strength of a child fighting a battle no soldier could fight for her. For the first time in the history many had witnessed, the unbreakable routine bent under the weight of compassion. The silence was broken by the sound of muffled sobs among the crowd, strangers moved by the rare sight of duty and compassion intertwining. The girl whispered, "Thank you," her small voice trembling but strong enough to carry into the quiet air. The guard did not answer, because he could not, but his eyes softened ever so slightly, just enough for her to see she had been seen, honored, remembered. The officer overseeing the guard detail stood frozen, torn between reprimanding the break-in protocol and realizing the sacredness of what had just occurred. No one in the crowd raised a phone or a camera. The moment was too sacred, too raw, as if everyone present understood that this was not for the world to capture, but for the girl, for her mother, and for the spirits who rested beneath the stone. What had been just another day of solemn ritual at the tomb had transformed into a moment that would never leave the memory of those who stood there. But as the guard lowered his salute and returned to his perfect stance, questions began to ripple quietly among the soldiers watching. Breaking discipline was no small thing. It could mean punishment, removal from duty, even disgrace. Yet none of that seemed to matter in that moment, because the girl's eyes glowed with a light that seemed to lift her above her suffering, as though she had been given a gift more powerful than medicine. Her mother bent to hold her, whispering that her daddy would have been proud. But in the shadows beyond the rope line, a senior officer had been watching carefully. His face revealed no expression, but his mind was already turning. For a tomb guard to break the rules was unheard of, but perhaps this moment was not about punishment, it was about a lesson that went deeper than regulation. As the girl was wheeled away, the guard resumed his march, stone-faced once more, yet carrying the weight of what he had done. And though the crowd dispersed slowly, whispering among themselves, one truth remained clear: the rules had been broken, but something greater had been honored. And that truth was only the beginning of what would follow.